Hey, what's up everyone? James here again. I know it's been a while, but with the holidays over, I finally found some time to do another video. I've added quite a bit to my collection over the last couple of months, so I thought it would be fun to highlight some of my favorites. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start off with some of the new consoles I added. First up is the Model 101 NES, also known as the Toploader. This model was released near the end of the NES lifespan, therefore it's not as common as the original model, but it's not necessarily hard to come by if you're looking for one. I didn't even know this model existed until I started collecting. It's much more compact than the original, but the biggest downfall with it, in my opinion, is the fact that it only allows RF out, which I'm not a huge fan of. If you're wanting an NES to play, I highly recommend just getting the original model, but as a collector, I had to get one. Next up, we have the mighty Sega Genesis, Sega 32X, and Sega CD combo, or as I started calling it, the Ultra Mega Sega Genesis. Just like the NES Toploader, I didn't really know anything about the 32X until I started collecting. I was familiar with the Sega CD though, considering a buddy of mine had one back in the day. If you're not familiar with these add-ons, the 32X was kind of a bridge between the Sega Genesis and the Sega Saturn, and allowed users to basically upgrade their Genesis from a 16-bit system to a 32-bit system. However, like the Genesis, the games were released on cartridges, which didn't allow for much more storage. The Sega CD, though, did allow for additional storage, utilizing compact discs which gave us CD-quality music, full-motion video, and some other additional technical specifications as well. A few games actually utilize both the 32X and the Sega CD simultaneously. Hooking these bad boys up can be a bit of a nightmare. The Sega CD is pretty easy considering it uses the same video output as the Genesis, but it still requires its own power supply. The 32X on the other hand requires its own power supply as well, but you also have to run the video out from the Genesis into the 32X and then out to the TV. Granted, these add-ons were pretty much a complete failure. They look pretty badass when all three are combined. Next up, I have a complete in-box Sega Master System. To be honest, I spent less for this than the out-of-box version I purchased a while back, so it was kind of hard to pass up. The best part is this model is different than my other one. As you can see, this one comes with Hang-On and Safari Hunt pre-built in, whereas mine has this exciting snail maze game. The box may not be in the best shape, but I am happy to add this to the collection. Thanks to the wife, I added a couple of handheld systems as well. First up, we have the Sega Game Gear. A buddy of mine also had one of these back in the day, and I remember playing it from time to time. I actually really liked the Game Gear, although this thing was nowhere near as portable as the Game Boy. Having the backlit screen was a huge advantage, but at a cost considering battery life was estimated to be around 3 to 5 hours and required 6 AA batteries. Despite that though, it's still a pretty cool system. Since I received quite a few games with it, instead of talking about each one, here's a quick montage of all the games I got. Next up, we have the Game Boy Advance. Considering I didn't have one of these growing up, I've enjoyed this one more than I expected to. The absence of a backlit screen does bother me just like the original Game Boy, but you were able to get up to 15 hours of gameplay with only 2 AA batteries. Not as good as the Game Boy Color, but considering it's a bit more powerful, that's not bad at all. My wife actually won this from an eBay auction, so it came with several games. So again, here's a quick montage of all the games I got. So I have a nice stack of games here that I've added over the last couple of months. First up we have Oddworld Abe's Odyssey. I've been trying to track this one down for a while now. I came across the greatest hits version numerous times, but for me there's something special about having the original release. This is a series I don't feel gets enough love. I love the characters, the humor, and the overall universe that is Oddworld. It's challenging but not impossible. You will die a lot. Thankfully, there's checkpoints all throughout the game, so when you die, you don't get sent back very far. I could talk about this game and this series all day, so perhaps I'll go more in depth in a future video. Next up we have Judge Dredd for the Super Nintendo. This was a game I got from Video Games Monthly, and from what I've played so far, I've really enjoyed. It's kind of a run and gun where you play as Judge Dredd, of course. Each stage offers a different objective to accomplish, and you have the option to either execute or arrest the criminals as you make your way through the stage. It's pretty fun, actually. Here we have Doom for the 32X. I was actually surprised by this one. It's not the best port of Doom out there, but it's still enjoyable. Granted, I'd rather play the version I have on the PS1, but if I only had it on the 32X, I wouldn't be disappointed. Next up we have Little Big Planet for the PS3. I really enjoy this game, but I can honestly only play it in short bursts. I love how you can customize your characters, there's a bunch of stuff to collect, you can change your character's facial expressions, and even create your own levels. But honestly, my favorite thing about this game is the ability to bitch smack your friends. Next up we have Capcom Digital Collection. This collection features 8 games that were available for the Xbox Live Arcade. My favorites have to be Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, Final Fight Double Impact, Wolf of the Battlefield Commando 3, and 1942 Joint Strike. The other 4 games are pretty cool as well, but those are the ones I enjoyed the most. Here we have Virtua Fighter for the 32X. I don't know how this compares to the Saturn port. Sure, it's not the best fighter out there, but it's still fun in small doses. I used to play Virtua Fighter 2 on the Saturn all the time as a kid, so I do enjoy going back and playing this series every now and then. Next up we have Sonic Generations for the Xbox 360. After so many disappointing Sonic games, this one finally gave me hope for the future. I really do love seeing some of the classic levels reimagined, and I thought the idea of having a 2D and a 3D version of each level was pretty cool. It's not perfect, but it was definitely a step in the right direction. Next we have Mortal Kombat for the Sega CD. Compared to the other console ports, this one is much more faithful to the arcade. And thanks to the CD format, the game also features the authentic arcade soundtrack. Other than that though, it's pretty much what you would expect from Mortal Kombat. Next up we have Cyborg Hunter for the Sega Master System. It took some time for me to figure this one out, but the more I played, the more I started to enjoy it. You play as a bounty hunter out to save the universe, or something like that. Sure, it's nothing revolutionary, but I'd recommend giving this one a chance. Next up we have Sonic CD. I know a lot of people either love or hate this game. I'm kinda in the middle. I do love how each level has a past and future version. However, I always had a hard time accomplishing the time travel mechanics, considering you have to run full speed for a short amount of time, but I always seem to run into an obstacle or an enemy during the process. Next we have Amped 3 for the Xbox 360. It's been a while since I played the original, but I remember playing it quite often. It's not as addictive as, say, Tony Hawk, but it's still a fun experience. It's a game that doesn't take itself too serious, which adds a bit of charm to it. It's not necessarily a game I can sit down and play for hours on end, but it's fun to pop in for 15-20 minutes. Here we have Russian Attack for the NES. This was another one I got from Video Games Monthly. There's nothing real special about it, but I do love beat-em-ups and I have a good time with this one. They had the arcade version at the Grand Old Game Room Expo that the wife and I went to a couple of months back, but I didn't actually play it for some reason. If I come across it again though, I'll have to see how the NES version compares. Next up we have Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Sonic 3 is without a doubt my favorite Sonic game of all time. I had so much fun with this game as a kid and I still enjoy it to this day. But the coolest thing though was being able to combine both games and play the game as the developers intended. But due to time constraints and storage limitations, they were split into two separate games. Here we have Kirby and the Rainbow Curse for the Wii U. I really like the visual style of this game. Everything is very colorful, which is to be expected from a Kirby game, but I love how everything looks like it's molded out of clay. The gameplay though, I am not a huge fan of. You don't move Kirby around like you normally do. You have to use the stylus to draw a rainbow rope in order to move Kirby around the stage. To be honest, I think this game should have just been released on the 3DS, because that's what it feels like it was made for. Why they chose to release this on the Wii U, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a terrible game, it just takes some getting used to. Next we have another game I had a hard time tracking down, and that's Silent Hill 2 for the Xbox. Just like Abe's Odyssey, I came across the Platinum Hits version quite frequently, but again, I wanted the original release. The few I did come across were always in pretty rough condition, but I finally found one that was acceptable. The PS2 version, however, was pretty easy to come by though. This was the first Silent Hill game I ever played, and it's honestly one of my favorite games of all time. I love the story, the atmosphere, and especially the music. To be honest, I listen to the soundtrack probably once a month. This is another series I could talk all day about, so perhaps I'll save it for a future video. So with the new South Park game coming out, I had to pick up the Stick of Truth. Matt Stone and Trey Parker were heavily involved with the production of this game, which is why it turned out so well. Someone could walk into the room while you're playing and they'd more than likely assume you're just watching an episode on TV. To be honest though, I'm not at all a fan of turn-based style combat, but I surprisingly really enjoyed the battle segments. If you're a fan of South Park, I can't recommend this game enough. Next up we have Rayman Origins for the Wii. This game features tons of levels along with fun and challenging gameplay. The wife and I enjoy playing this together, but you can actually have up to 4 players simultaneously. I was a big fan of Rayman 1, 2, and 3, and I've actually really enjoyed the direction they've taken this series. Here we have a complete in-box copy of Super Punch-Out for the Super Nintendo. I don't really stress over complete in-box cartridge games, but apparently the wife got this for a pretty good deal after buying a bunch of stuff for me for Christmas at a local game store. In my opinion, this one isn't as difficult as the original, but just like the original, once you figure out the patterns, the game becomes much easier. Although I do find the special circuit to be pretty challenging. But even after figuring out the patterns, it's still a lot of fun. I'm glad they brought this series back for the Wii, and I hope that we possibly see some more Punch-Out games in the future. Here we have Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for the PS3. This collection features some of my favorite games from one of my favorite consoles. Although I own the original copies of most of these games, it's fun to check them out in HD, which looks really good. Also, being able to save on certain games is a luxury, like Kid Chameleon for example. Here we have Mortal Kombat for the Xbox 360. Out of all the 3D era Mortal Kombat games, this one is definitely my favorite, although I haven't played the most recent one yet. I really love the story mode where you basically reenact the first 3 games, but with slight differences that occur.
Sub-Zero wins. Flawless victory.
Next up we have Yoshi's Woolly World for the Wii U. To me, this game is pretty much Yoshi's story meets Kirby's epic yarn. If you've played this one, you'll probably understand what I mean by that. The gameplay is fun, the visuals are great, and I look forward to putting a lot more time into this game. Next up we have Knight's Journey of Dreams for the Wii. Unfortunately, I've never played the original Saturn game, although I've heard great things about it. It took me a while to get used to the controls, but once I did, I started to enjoy it. I can't say it's a game for everyone, but I'd recommend giving it a chance. And last up we have Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. To be honest, I haven't really been keeping up with current gen games, but this was one I've been wanting to play for a while. I just completed it and I can safely say I wasn't disappointed. Graphically, the game is gorgeous, the story keeps you entertained, the adventure keeps you coming back, and I love the references to other Naughty Dog titles. I remember reading at one point that this is supposed to be the final game of the series. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but if it is, it's an amazing end to a great series. So before I go, I have one last thing I want to show you guys. My wife got this for me for Christmas, and I was surprised she even found it. And to be honest, it's definitely the highlight of my collection right now, and that is the Taco Bell exclusive PS4 Gold Edition. I wanted this ever since I first saw it, but to be honest, I didn't eat Taco Bell enough to even stand a chance. She found this at a pawn shop around town. Unfortunately, it didn't come with the box, but it did come with the controller along with this card. Apparently, this is console 2073 out of 6,500 made. A really cool find, and I'm glad to add this to the collection. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and like and comment below. If you'd like to check out some of my other videos, you can check them out here. And if you'd like to keep up with future videos, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking right here. And hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.